A millionaire CEO sits frozen in the most expensive restaurant in Savannah, watching her 7-year-old son cry silent tears over untouched food. 8 days of silence, 8 days since he heard words that shattered his world. But a little girl was about to do something that would shatter her heart in ways she never expected. Before we continue, please tell us, where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. Daddy, why is that boy crying? Landon Silas looked up from his menu, following his daughter's gaze across the elegant dining room of the Willowbrook. Through the soft amber lighting and the gentle clink of expensive silverware, he spotted them immediately. A woman in a designer dress and a young boy whose tears caught the candlelight as they fell. Dazzle, sweetheart, it's not polite to stare, Landon said gently, reaching across to redirect his 5-year-old daughter's attention. But Dazzle wasn't staring, she was studying. There was a difference, one that Landon had come to recognize in the 3 years since her mother died. His little girl saw things, felt things, understood pain in ways that made his chest ache. But Daddy, he's really sad, Dazzle insisted, her voice dropping to what she believed was a whisper, but was really just a slightly softer volume. His eyes look empty, like Mr. Whiskers when he got lost for 3 whole days. Mr. Whiskers was their neighbor's cat. The comparison would have been funny if Dazzle's expression wasn't so serious. Landon glanced back at the window table. The boy sat motionless, staring at his plate. His mother, because it had to be his mother, given the desperate way she kept trying to catch his eye, looked like she was barely holding herself together. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for her water glass. Her smile, when she tried to offer one to her son, didn't reach her eyes. "Some people just have hard days, sweetheart," Landon said, the words familiar on his tongue. He'd said them to Dazzle before, during those early months after Elise died, when he'd broken down in grocery store aisles and parking lots, when grief had ambushed him at traffic lights and during cartoon commercials. "No, Daddy." Dazzle shook her head, her honey-colored hair swishing against her purple dress. "This isn't a hard day. This is—" She paused, searching for words. "This is the kind of sad that doesn't go away when you count to 10. Landon's throat tightened. His daughter was 5. She shouldn't understand that kind of sad, but she did, because she'd lived it. At the window table, Millie West was trying very hard not to shatter into 1,000 pieces. "Jude, baby, please," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the restaurant's ambient music. "Just one bite? For me?" Her son didn't respond, didn't even blink, just sat there with tears streaming down his pale cheeks, his hands folded in his lap, his whole body rigid with a pain she couldn't touch. 8 days. 8 days since the argument. 8 days since her ex-husband Grant had stood in their foyer and torn apart every illusion of civility they'd managed to maintain for their son's sake. 8 days since Jude had heard his father call his mother a failure, heard his mother call his father a liar, heard the 2 people he loved most in the world destroy each other with words sharp enough to draw blood. 8 days since her 7-year-old boy had simply stopped. The pediatrician had used clinical terms, selective mutism triggered by acute psychological trauma. The child psychologist had been gentler but no less devastating. "Your son has retreated into himself as a protective mechanism. He needs time, stability, and—" She'd paused here, her eyes sympathetic. "Therapy. Lots of therapy." Grant had used it as ammunition, filed an emergency custody motion claiming Millie was an unfit mother, too focused on her company, too driven, too cold. The court date was 13 days away. 13 days to prove she wasn't the monster her ex-husband claimed she was. "Jude, sweetheart, this was our special place, remember?" Millie tried again, her voice cracking despite her best efforts. "Thursday nights, just you and me. You always ordered the grilled cheese with truffle oil because you thought truffle was the funniest word." A fresh tear rolled down Jude's face. Millie's heart cracked clean through. "Daddy, I need to help him." Landon blinked, pulled from his observation of the grieving mother and silent child. "What?" "The sad boy. Dazzle was already sliding off her chair, her sneakers clicking against the hardwood floor. He needs someone. I can feel it in my tummy. That means it's important. Dazzle, wait! Landon reached for her, but his daughter was already moving with the kind of determined confidence that only 5-year-olds possessed, the kind that didn't yet understand that the world might say no. He scrambled out of his chair, nearly knocking over his water glass. Sweetheart, we can't just walk up to strangers. Too late. Dazzle had already reached the window table. She stood there for exactly 3 seconds, studying the crying boy with an intensity that made several nearby diners pause their conversations. Then she reached out and patted the elegant woman's arm. "Excuse me," Dazzle said, looking up at Millie with eyes that were far too knowing for her age. "I'm Dazzle. Is it okay if I talk to your boy? He looks like he needs a friend, and I'm very good at being a friend. My daddy says so." Millie stared at the tiny girl in front of her, purple dress with a small stain near the hem, honey-colored curly hair, expression so earnest it bordered on fierce. Millie's gaze shifted to the man hovering awkwardly behind the little girl, clearly mortified. He was tall, had the exhausted eyes of someone who understood sleepless nights. "I suppose that would be all right." Landon opened his mouth to apologize, to collect his daughter and retreat to their table, but Dazzle was already climbing into the empty chair beside the silent boy. "Hi," Dazzle said, turning her full attention to Jude. "I'm Dazzle, like the sparkly kind. My mommy picked my name because she said I lit up every room." She paused, her voice softening. "My mommy is in heaven now. That's a very far-away place, but my daddy says she can still see me being brave." Jude's hands twitched in his lap, the smallest movement, but movement. Landon felt his breath catch. Beside him, Millie had gone completely still. "I think something made you really, really sad," Dazzle continued, her tone conversational, like they were discussing the weather or her favorite cartoon. "And you know what? That's okay. Being sad is allowed. Sometimes I'm so sad I can't even use my words either." Another tear slipped down Jude's cheek, but his breathing had changed, slower, like he was actually listening. "When I'm that kind of sad, my daddy says I don't need to talk. I just need someone to sit with me and be sad together." Dazzle tilted her head, considering. "But I've been thinking about something. Want to know what it is?" Jude didn't respond, but he didn't turn away either. Dazzle leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow still carried across the table. "I think you don't need lots of people. I think you just need one person who really truly gets it. Someone who won't leave even when things are hard." She paused, then added with devastating simplicity, "I think you just need a sister." The words hung in the air like smoke. Millie's hand flew to her mouth. Landon felt something shift in his chest, some ancient recognition of a moment that mattered, that would echo. "Not a real sister, 'cause that's not how families work," Dazzle clarified, as if this was a perfectly reasonable conversation to have with a stranger in a fancy restaurant. "But a friend's sister, someone who's on your team no matter what, someone who sees you even when you're invisible." She reached out then and placed her small hand over Jude's. "I could be that person," she said softly, "if you want. I've never had a brother before, but I think I'd be really good at it. I'm very good at keeping promises, and I promise I won't leave. Cross my heart." She made an elaborate X over her chest. "And you," his voice was rusty, barely more than a breath. "You promise you won't leave?" Millie made a sound like something breaking. Dazzle nodded solemnly, her expression as serious as a wedding vow. "I promise. Dazzles don't break promises. We're too brave for that." Something flickered across Jude's face. Not quite a smile, but a softening, a crack in the wall he'd built around himself. "I'm Jude," he whispered. "Hi, Jude." Dazzle beamed at him like he'd just performed a magic trick. "That's a really good name. It sounds like an astronaut name. Are you interested in space?" And just like that, as if a spell had been broken, Jude nodded. It was the smallest gesture, but to Millie, watching her son engage with another human being for the first time in over a week, it felt like witnessing a resurrection. Landon stood frozen, uncertain whether to intervene or disappear, or possibly just melt into the floor. The elegant woman was crying openly now, tears streaming down her face as she watched her son nod, then nod again, then actually lean slightly toward Dazzle. "I'm so sorry," Landon finally managed, his voice low. "My daughter, she has very strong feelings about helping people. I should have stopped her. Please don't apologize." Millie looked up at him, and the gratitude in her eyes was so raw it made him step back. That's the first time he's spoken in 8 days. 8 days of silence, and your daughter just... Her voice broke. How did she know? Landon glanced at Dazzle, who was now explaining to Jude about Mr. Whiskers and his very complicated personality. "My wife died 3 years ago. Cancer. Autoimmune disorder that attacked everything. She was gone 6 months after diagnosis. The words still hurt, would probably always hurt, but they came easier now. Dazzle was only 2. She doesn't remember much, but I think she remembers the feeling, the loss. She sees it in other people." Millie's expression softened with understanding and grief. "I'm so sorry." "Thank you." Landon hesitated, then added, "I don't mean to pry, but 8 days of silence? That's..."
"His father and I had a fight." Millie's voice was barely audible. "A terrible one. We thought Jude was upstairs. He wasn't. He heard everything. Every cruel word, every accusation, every..." She stopped, pressing her fingers to her temples. "The doctor says it's selective mutism triggered by trauma. My ex-husband says it's proof I'm an unfit mother. The court hearing is in less than 2 weeks. Landon felt anger flash through him. "That's insane. You can see how much you care about him." "Can you?" Millie's laugh was bitter. "Because I'm the CEO of a hospitality company that I've poured everything into. I work 60-hour weeks. I miss soccer games and school plays. Grant, my ex, he's not entirely wrong. I have been married to my work. That doesn't make you a bad mother, doesn't it?" Millie looked at her son, who was now telling Dazzle something about rocket launches, his words halting but present. At the table, Dazzle had stood up and was tugging on Jude's sleeve. "This is silly. We can't be friend siblings if we're at different tables. That's not how it works." Jude looked at his mother, then at Dazzle, then back at his mother. Can we sit with them?" Millie's breath caught. A full sentence. A request. Engagement. "If that's all right with..." She looked at Landon helplessly. "Of course," Landon said, even as his mind screamed that this was chaos, that they were strangers, that he had no idea to have dinner with a millionaire CEO and her traumatized son. We'd love that."
The restaurant staff, charmed beyond measure by the tiny girl directing operations like a general commanding troops, efficiently combined the tables. Within minutes, Landon found himself sitting across from Millie West, trying to remember how to make adult conversation. "So," he started, then immediately wanted to kick himself. "So, brilliant opening." Millie smiled, a real smile, small but genuine. "So, this is weird, right?" Landon said. "Not bad weird, just unexpected weird." "Very unexpected." Millie glanced at their children, who were now engaged in what appeared to be a serious discussion about whether astronauts could eat pizza in space. "But I think maybe the best things usually are." "I'm Landon, by the way, Landon Silas." He offered his hand across the table. "Millie West." Her handshake was firm, professional, the grip of someone used to boardrooms and negotiations. "Thank you for letting your daughter..." "I don't even know how to describe what just happened." "Dazzle has a habit of deciding who needs help and then helping them whether they want it or not," Landon smiled. "Last month, she decided our mailman looked lonely, so she made him a friendship bracelet. He wears it every day now." "That's..." Millie's eyes glistened. "That's beautiful." They ordered food, though neither of them could later remember what they chose. The conversation started awkwardly, small talk about the weather, about Savannah, about the restaurant's reputation, but gradually deepened. Landon learned that Millie had built Monroe Hospitality Group from near bankruptcy after her grandfather's death, transforming 3 failing properties into a regional empire of 12 hotels, that she loved her work fiercely, but had sacrificed her marriage for it, that Grant had been having an affair for 2 years before she found out, but somehow in the divorce proceedings she'd become the villain. Millie learned that Landon was a project manager for a construction firm, that he'd learned to braid hair from YouTube at 2 a.m., that he'd never imagined himself as a single father, but had somehow figured it out one day at a time. That his late wife, Elise, had been a kindergarten teacher who made every ordinary moment feel like magic. That he still talked to her picture some nights, asking for guidance he knew wouldn't come. "Do you think it gets easier?" Millie asked quietly, watching Jude laugh, actually laugh at something Dazzle said. "The guilt? The fear that you're failing them?" Landon was quiet for a long moment. "Honestly, no. I think you just get better at carrying it." "That's bleak." "Maybe, but it's also freeing in a way." He met her eyes. "Once you accept that you're going to make mistakes, that you're going to have bad days, that you're never going to be perfect, it's almost like permission to just be human, to do your best and hope it's enough." Millie absorbed this, turning it over in her mind. "My ex-husband used to say I approached motherhood like a business problem, that I was always strategizing instead of just being present." "Were you?" She considered. "Sometimes, yes, but I was also trying to build something stable for Jude. Security, options, a future where he wouldn't have to worry about money or opportunity or—" She stopped. "But he doesn't need financial security right now. He just needs his mother to see him." "And you do," Landon said firmly. "I've watched you for the past hour. Every time he speaks, you light up. Every time he retreats, you ache. That's not a CEO solving a problem. That's a mother loving her son." Millie's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. I have no idea how much I needed to hear that."
Across the table, Dazzle was explaining to Jude that yes, technically you could burp in zero gravity, but it would be different because there's no up or down in space, so the burp wouldn't know which way to go and might just hang around your face forever. Jude found this hilarious. "Your daughter is remarkable," Millie said, watching the children with something like wonder. "She's my whole world." Landon's voice was soft. "After Elise died, there were days I couldn't get out of bed. Days when breathing felt like climbing a mountain. But then Dazzle would come in, all wild hair and sticky hands, and she'd say something like, 'Daddy, the sun is awake, so we have to be awake too.' And I'd just go, because she needed me to." "Did you ever resent it, the responsibility?" "Never. Not once." Landon shook his head. "Terrified by it? Absolutely. Overwhelmed? Constantly. But resentful? No. She saved my life. I'm just trying to be worthy of that." Millie reached across the table and squeezed his hand briefly. "I think you're doing just fine." The meal stretched longer than either of them expected. Jude ate 3 bites of his grilled cheese, not much, but infinitely more than nothing. Dazzle consumed approximately half her pasta before declaring she was full of noodles and couldn't possibly eat another bite. When the check came, both Landon and Millie reached for it simultaneously. "Please," Millie said, "let me. After what Dazzle did tonight, I couldn't possibly." "Mr. Silas," Millie's voice took on a tone that suggested she was used to winning negotiations. "My son spoke for the first time in over a week. He laughed, he engaged. That's worth far more than the price of dinner." Landon relented, though he felt awkward about it. As they gathered their things, Dazzle tugged on Millie's sleeve. "Mrs. Jude's mom? You can call me Millie, sweetie."
Okay, Miss Millie, can Jude and I have a play date because he doesn't know about Mr. Whiskers yet, and that's a very long story that needs lots of time because Mr. Whiskers has a very complicated personality, and also he once ate a sock. Millie laughed, a real full laugh that transformed her face. "I would like that very much, Dazzle." Numbers were exchanged, tentative plans were made for the following Saturday, and as Landon carried a sleepy Dazzle out to their aging Toyota Camry, buckling her into her car seat, he felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Hope. Not the desperate, grasping kind, but the quiet, steady kind that suggested maybe, possibly, life could surprise you. "Daddy?" Dazzle mumbled, already half asleep. "Yeah, sweetheart? I think we helped them tonight, the sad boy and his worried mommy." "I think you did, baby. You definitely did." "Good." Dazzle yawned. Landon drove home through the quiet Savannah streets, his daughter's words echoing in his mind, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, the loneliness that usually lived in his chest felt just a little bit lighter. The first playdate happened on Saturday at Millie's home in the historic district, a beautiful 3-story Victorian that Dazzle declared was basically a castle but with more bathrooms.
Landon had been nervous, pulling up to the ornate iron gates in his 12-year-old Camry with its coffee-stained interior and suspicious rattle in the engine. Millie's world was clearly different from his. Her house probably cost more than he'd make in a lifetime. But Millie answered the door in jeans and a simple t-shirt, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, looking nothing like the polished CEO from the restaurant and everything like a tired mom who'd been up late worrying. "They're in the backyard," she said, gesturing to where Jude and Dazzle were already examining something in the grass with intense concentration. "I think they found a caterpillar, or possibly a small alien. The jury's still out." Landon laughed, following her to the kitchen, where coffee was already brewing. "How's he been?" he asked, accepting the mug she offered. "Since Thursday." Millie's smile was cautious but genuine. "Better. He's been talking more. Not constantly, and he still goes quiet when he's overwhelmed, but it's progress. His therapist says having a friend his own age who understands might actually be the breakthrough we needed." Dazzle hasn't stopped talking about Jude since Thursday. She's informed me that they're officially friend siblings now, and that means we have to have family dinners together because that's what families do. I shook my head fondly. She's already planning Thanksgiving. She likes to be prepared. They stood at the kitchen window, watching their children. Jude was explaining something animatedly, his hands moving in elaborate gestures. Dazzle was listening with the kind of rapt attention usually reserved for her favorite cartoons. "Can I ask you something?" Millie said quietly. "Of course." "How did you do it after your wife died? How did you just keep going?" Landon was quiet for a long moment, considering the question. "Honestly, I didn't have a choice. Dazzle needed me. So I got up every morning even when I wanted to stay in bed forever. I made breakfast even when I couldn't taste anything. I went through the motions until, eventually, the motions started to feel like living again. But the grief never goes away," Landon said gently. "It just changes shape, becomes something you carry instead of something that crushes you. Some days are harder than others. Birthdays, anniversaries, random Tuesday afternoons when you hear a song or smell something familiar, and it all comes rushing back. I don't grieve my marriage. I grieve who I thought Grant was, who I thought we were together, the family I believed we were building. That's still loss. It still counts." "My therapist says the same thing," Millie smiled ruefully. "I have a hard time accepting it. It feels like I failed." "You didn't fail. You survived. There's a difference." They talked for hours that first playdate, while Jude and Dazzle created what they called Moonbase Popover, an elaborate fort made from sheets, pillows, and dining room chairs that somehow also incorporated a complex ranking system of snacks. Apparently, goldfish crackers were top-tier astronaut food, while broccoli was alien poison. When Landon finally said they should probably head home, Dazzle and Jude were devastated. "But we didn't finish the secret handshake," Dazzle protested. Jude nodded vigorously. "And I didn't show her how to calculate escape velocity." "What's escape velocity?" Dazzle asked. "It's how fast you have to go to leave Earth's gravity." Jude's eyes lit up. "It's really, really fast, like 7 miles per second fast." "That's so fast," Dazzle was appropriately awed. Millie and Landon exchanged amused glances. "How about next Saturday?" Millie suggested. "You two can work on your secret handshake then." "Can Dazzle sleep over?" Jude asked, the question tumbling out before you could second-guess it. Then he froze, as if surprised by his own boldness. Millie looked at Landon. "Would that be all right? I mean, if you're comfortable." "Please, Daddy." Dazzle's eyes were enormous. "I've never had a sleepover before, and Jude needs me to teach him about Mr. Whiskers, and that takes a really long time because Mr. Whiskers has 17 different personalities." "I thought you said he had a complicated personality, not 17 personalities." "It's the same thing." "It's really not. Daddy, please." Landon looked at his daughter's hopeful face, at Jude's cautious excitement, at Millie's warm smile. "Okay," he said,
but we're going to need to set some ground rules about bedtime and vegetables, and Dazzle launched herself at him, wrapping her arms around his legs. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You're the best daddy in the whole entire universe. Just this universe? Landon teased. Not the multiverse? All the universes, Dazzle declared. Every single one. The sleepovers became a regular thing. Every other Saturday, Landon would drop Dazzle off at Millie's Victorian house, and the two children would disappear into their imaginary world. And somewhere along the way, the quick handoffs at the door became coffee in the kitchen. Coffee became lunch. Lunch became sitting on the back porch while the kids played, talking about everything and nothing. Landon told Millie about Elise's diagnosis, how they'd been planning a vacation to the Grand Canyon when the doctor called with the test results, how they'd tried to stay positive, to fight, to believe that love and determination could beat biology, how they'd been wrong. He told her about holding his wife's hand in the hospital at 4:37 a.m. on a Sunday morning, watching her take her last breath, feeling his entire world tilt on its axis. Her last words were, "Don't let her forget how to laugh," he said, his voice rough. "And I've tried. I've tried so hard to make sure Dazzle has joy. But some days I wonder if I'm doing it right, if Elise would be proud or disappointed." "She'd be proud," Millie said with quiet certainty. "How could she not be? You're raising an incredible little girl who sees the world with so much compassion and courage. That doesn't happen by accident." Millie told Landon about her marriage, how she and Grant had met in college, how he'd supported her career initially, how something had shifted when Monroe Hospitality started succeeding beyond their expectations. "She wanted me to be successful," she said, "but not more successful than him. She wanted me to have ambition, but not too much ambition. And when the business exploded, when I started making more money, traveling more, being interviewed and recognized, it threatened him." The affair had started 18 months into her company's growth. A colleague from Grant's firm. Someone younger, less driven, more available. Someone who made him feel important instead of inadequate. "The worst part is, I didn't even see it," Millie admitted. "I was so focused on quarterly reports and expansion plans that I missed my own husband falling in love with someone else. What kind of person does that?" "The kind who trusted her partner," Landon said firmly. "His choices aren't your failure." "Aren't they? Maybe if I'd been more present?" "Then he should have used his words and told you how he felt. He's a grown man, Millie. He made a choice. You didn't force him into another woman's bed." Millie's laugh was watery. "My therapist says the same thing. I'm working on believing it." Their conversations grew longer, deeper. They talked about the impossible calculus of single parenting, how to be enough when you were only one person, how to make work deadlines and school pickups coexist, how to explain loss to children who deserved better explanations than sometimes bad things just happen. They talked about loneliness, the specific kind that came after loss, the kind that could hit you at random moments, in grocery store lines, during TV commercials, in the middle of the night when the house was too quiet and the bed was too big. "I thought I'd gotten used to it," Landon confessed one evening, watching fireflies blink in Millie's yard while Jude and Dazzle chased them with jars. "The loneliness. But recently I've been realizing maybe I just got numb to it, and that's not the same thing at all." Millie was quiet beside him, her shoulder almost but not quite touching his on the porch swing. "I've been thinking about something," she finally said. "What's that?" "About what Dazzle said that first night, about Jude needing a sister. She wasn't wrong." "No." Millie turned to look at him, her expression unreadable in the fading light. "But I've been wondering if maybe it works both ways. Maybe Dazzle needed a brother, too. Maybe—" She paused, searching for words. "Maybe we all needed each other." Landon's heart stuttered in his chest. "Millie, I'm not saying anything," she said quickly. "I'm just acknowledging that these Saturday afternoons have become the best part of my week, that I look forward to our conversations, that when something good happens at work, you're the first person I want to tell. And I don't know what that means or if it means anything at all, but I needed you to know." Landon reached over and took her hand, lacing their fingers together. "Me too," he said quietly. "All of it. Me too." They sat like that for a long moment, hands clasped, watching their children create magic from mason jars and summer twilight. Neither of them mentioned the obvious complication, that Landon was still in love with the ghost of his wife, that Millie was still working through the wreckage of her divorce, that they were both terrified of wanting something that might disappear. But they didn't let go either. 3 months after that first dinner at the Willowbrook, Millie's custody hearing finally arrived, though it was delayed because Grant brought up some excuses like he always does. But it was finally here. Landon had offered to watch Jude during the proceedings, but Millie insisted on bringing him. He should see me fighting for him. Even if I lose, he should know I tried.
The hearing lasted 4 hours. Grant's lawyer painted Millie as a workaholic who prioritized profit over parenting, who had emotionally neglected her son, who had created the circumstances that led to Jude's selective mutism. Millie's lawyer countered with evidence of her involvement in Jude's life, school records showing her attendance at conferences, photos from soccer games and birthday parties, testimonials from teachers and neighbors. The child psychologist testified that Jude's mutism was triggered by witnessing parental conflict, not by maternal neglect. That the boy had made remarkable progress in recent weeks, that he had a strong, healthy attachment to his mother. When Jude was called to speak with the judge privately, Millie had to physically restrain herself from following him into the chambers. 10 minutes later, he emerged. The judge returned. The gavel came down. Joint custody maintained. No change to the existing arrangement. Grant had won. Or rather, she hadn't lost. She called Landon from the courthouse parking lot, her voice shaking with relief and residual adrenaline. "He's still mine," she said. "Grant didn't win. He didn't take my son." "Of course not," Landon said, wishing he could be there to hold her. "You're his mother. That was never in question." "But it was. For 4 hours today, it absolutely was." Millie's breath hitched. "I've never been so scared in my life." "But you fought. And you won." "We won," Millie corrected softly. "If Dazzle hadn't approached Jude that night, if he hadn't started speaking again, if the therapist hadn't been able to document his recovery, the judge might have ruled differently. Your daughter saved my son. And maybe she saved me too." Landon didn't know what to say to that. The weight of it sat heavy in his chest. "Come over tonight," he found himself saying. "Both of you. Let's celebrate properly. I'll order pizza, we'll let the kids stay up late, and we'll just be relieved together." "I'd like that," Millie said. "I'd really like that." That night, in Landon's modest 2-bedroom apartment with its second-hand furniture and crayon-decorated walls, they celebrated. The kids built another fort, this one dubbed Victory Base Alpha, and consumed enough pizza to feed a small army. When Jude and Dazzle finally crashed around 10 p.m., collapsing in a tangle of blankets and exhaustion in Dazzle's room, Landon and Millie sat on his worn couch with cheap wine and mismatched glasses. "Thank you," Millie said quietly, "for today, for the past 3 months, for letting your daughter storm into our lives and refuse to leave. I don't think I had much choice in the matter. Dazzle is a force of nature. She gets it from her father." Landon laughed. "I'm definitely not a force of nature. I'm barely a force of mild weather." "You're selling yourself short." Millie set down her wineglass and turned to him fully. "You raised child who sees pain and runs toward it instead of away, who believes in promises and keeps them, who thinks the solution to sadness is companionship, not isolation. That doesn't happen by accident, Landon. That's you, your influence, your love." Landon felt his throat tighten. "I'm just trying not to screw her up too badly." "You're doing more than that. You're showing her how to be human, how to be brave, how to love even when it's hard, how to grow even in hard places." The reference to Dazzle's Poppy explanation made them both smile. They were quiet for a moment, the weight of everything unsaid sitting between them. "Millie," Landon finally said, "I need to tell you something." Her expression turned cautious. "Okay." "I've started looking forward to our time together, not just because Dazzle loves playing with Jude, but because He stopped, gathering courage. "Because I enjoy being around you, talking to you, learning about your life and your dreams and your fears. And that terrifies me. Why? Because I didn't think I'd ever feel this way again. After Elise died, I thought that part of my life was just over. That I'd focus on being Dazzle's dad and that would be enough. That wanting anything more would be a betrayal. Millie's eyes glistened. And now? Now I'm not sure anymore. Now I think maybe wanting more doesn't mean loving Elise less. Maybe hearts don't have a fixed capacity. Maybe they just expand. Like Dazzle said about family, Millie said softly. It's not about blood. It's about love and choice and showing up. Yeah, like that. Millie reached over and took his hand, the gesture familiar now, after months of casual touches and supportive squeezes. I'm scared too, she admitted. My marriage failed, spectacularly, and I don't know if I trust myself to try again, to be vulnerable with someone, to risk caring that much and having it fall apart. So what do we do? Millie was quiet, considering. Then she smiled, small but genuine. We could try being scared together, she suggested. We could take it slow. No pressure, no expectations. Just see what happens. See if this feeling is real or if it's just proximity and gratitude and single-parent loneliness. And if it's real, then we figure it out. Together. One day at a time. The same way we're figuring out everything else. Landon studied her face in the lamplight. The uncertainty there, but also hope. The fear, but also courage. I'd like that, he said. Trying. Slowly. Together. Yeah? Yeah. Millie leaned forward and kissed him softly. It was gentle, exploratory. The kind of kiss that asked questions instead of making statements. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling. This is probably a terrible idea, Millie whispered. Probably, Landon agreed. The kids will have opinions. So many opinions. And we both have baggage. Mountains of it. Everests of baggage. But maybe, Landon finished, that's okay. Maybe perfect isn't the goal. Maybe just being honest and present and willing to try is enough. Millie rested her head on his shoulder, and they sat like that for a long time, listening to the quiet breathing of their sleeping children in the next room, feeling the warmth of possibility settle around them like a blanket. 5 months later, Landon stood outside the Willowbrook adjusting his tie for the 4th time, a nervous habit that had never quite left him, and trying to remember how to breathe. Inside, Millie was waiting. They had arranged a proper date night. No kids, no play dates, just the two of them, returning to the place where everything had started. He'd rehearsed what he wanted to say approximately 47 times. It still didn't feel like enough. The hostess led him to the corner table by the window. Their table, though they'd never officially claimed it. Millie was already there, wearing a deep blue dress that made her eyes look like the ocean at dusk. Hi, Landon said, sliding into the seat across from her. Hi yourself, Millie smiled, but he could see the nervousness in the way she fidgeted with her napkin. This feels very formal all of a sudden. Does it? I was going for casually terrified. Nailed it. They ordered drinks, made small talk about work and the kids and the weather, dancing around the real conversation hovering between them. Finally, Millie set down her water glass and looked at him directly. Landon, what are we doing here? I wanted to talk to you about something. I gathered. You've been nervous for 3 days. Dazzle told me you practiced in the mirror. She has a big mouth. She cares about you. We all do. Millie reached across the table. Whatever you need to say, just say it. Landon took a breath. I spoke to Dazzle, about us, about what this might become. Millie's expression was cautious. What did she say? She asked if you were going to be her pretend mom the way Jude is her pretend brother. Landon smiled. Then she asked if that meant she'd get 2 Christmases. She's very focused on the practical benefits. Millie laughed, but the sound was tight. I talked to Jude, too. He wanted to know if you'd be his friend dad. He said he needs someone to help him build model rockets because I don't understand physics. To be fair, orbital mechanics are complicated. Landon, Millie squeezed his hand. What are you asking me? He met her eyes, those eyes that had become as familiar as his own reflection, that looked at him with understanding and affection and a hint of fear that mirrored his own.
"I want to try," he said simply. "Really try. Not just co-parenting and friendly dinners and stolen kisses when the kids aren't looking. I want to date you properly, with flowers and awkward goodnight kisses and meeting each other's extended families and all the terrifying vulnerability that entails." That does sound terrifying. It absolutely is. And wonderful. That too. Millie's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "I'm not trying to replace Elise. I would never—" "I know. And I'm not trying to fix what Grant broke. I'm just trying to build something new, something ours." Landon paused. "I'll always love Elise. She gave me Dazzle. She taught me how to be a father. She made me believe in love in the first place. But I think she'd want me to be happy, to keep living instead of just existing." "I think so too," Millie said softly. "So? So, yes. Let's try. Let's be terrified together. Let's take it one day at a time and see where this goes." "Yeah?" "Yeah." This time when they kissed, it felt less like a question and more like a promise. 1 year after a little girl in a purple dress marched across a restaurant to talk to a sad boy at a corner table, the Silas and West families returned to the Willowbrook for their anniversary dinner. Dazzle, now 6 and somehow even more confident, was explaining to Jude why their corner table was historically significant and deserved a commemorative plaque. "This is where our story started," she announced, gesturing grandly. "This is where I decided you needed a sister and made it happen through the power of friendship and determination." "And also because my mom and your dad fell in love," Jude added pragmatically. He was 8 now, still obsessed with space, but also developing a keen interest in historical accuracy.
"Well, yes, but that was secondary to the sister situation." "I don't think it was secondary." "Jude, I was there. I know what happened." "I was there too." Landon and Millie exchanged amused glances across the table. They'd been officially together for 7 months now, living separately still, taking it slow, but committed in a way that felt both terrifying and absolutely right. It wasn't always easy. They had to navigate work schedules and parenting philosophies and the occasional argument about whose turn it was to host the weekend sleepover. Millie still worked long hours. Landon still talked to Elise's photos some nights. They both had moments of doubt, of fear, of wondering if they were doing the right thing. But they talked about it, worked through it, chose each other every day. "I've been thinking," Millie said, resting her head on Landon's shoulder in a gesture that had become comfortable, familiar. "Always dangerous," Landon teased. "About what Dazzle said that first night, about Jude needing a sister." "Hmm?" "She wasn't wrong, but I don't think it was just Jude who needed something." Millie paused, watching their children bicker affectionately. "I think we all needed each other. You and me and the kids. We were all broken in different ways, and somehow we fit together, made something whole." Landon kissed the top of her head. "I think you're right." Across the table, Dazzle had moved on from historical debates to teaching Jude the newest iteration of their secret handshake, which now involved 17 distinct movements and what appeared to be interpretive dance. Jude was laughing. Millie was smiling. And Landon Silas, widower, single-father, construction manager, and the luckiest man in Savannah, finally understood something profound. Love doesn't end. It doesn't get used up or worn out. It just grows. It stretches and expands and finds new shapes, new hearts to hold, new spaces to fill. His heart was fuller than he'd ever imagined it could be again. His family was whole in a way he hadn't known was possible. And it had all started because a 5-year-old girl in a purple dress had looked at a crying boy and decided he needed a sister. Sometimes the smallest voices carry the biggest truths. Sometimes family is built on choice, not blood. Sometimes healing begins with 3 impossible words whispered across a crowded room. And sometimes, just sometimes, the broken pieces fit together in ways you never expected, creating something even more beautiful than what came before. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button. If you've ever found family in unexpected places, if you've ever watched your child be braver than you knew how to be, if you've ever believed that love can grow even after loss, this story is for you. Subscribe to Everbell's Stories for more heartwarming tales about the beautiful, messy, unexpected ways love finds us. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story. And tell us in the comments, what does family mean to you? Have you ever experienced the kind of connection that changed everything? We'd love to hear your story. Because at the end of the day, we're all just looking for the same things: to be seen, to be chosen, to belong. And sometimes it takes a 5-year-old with honey-colored braids and too much confidence to show us that family isn't about perfection. It's about showing up. It's about choosing each other. It's about growing even in the hard places.